ethically, problem solving, especially with environmental justice, it has to be democratic. So co-creation has to be a part of the process, because everyone's voice who's going to be affected by the decision, that has to be heard, and it has to be consensual. It's when problems can be really wicked and you have lots of people with different interests, and that also people have different histories and different research backgrounds, and so they have different preconceived ideas, and they're going to come to the discussion with some things that they genuinely think are right, and not everyone is wrong, but we all just have a different opinion.
So co-creation itself is more about giving the space for different voices to be heard, and also the opportunity to have a part in this process that is like create this ownership. Co-creation is a way to really lever up the play field, you know, like to really be able to have like a more of a common ground to create a common solutions. In the case of planning, for example, you need to listen to all the interest and the also as well like aspirations and values of the different stakeholders that will be affected, or perhaps not even affected, but that can contribute to do a proper, let's say, sustainable planning.
I said maritime spatial planning is an interactive process. So it's a participatory process and co-creative process in essence. So it all starts like that. It's something that is put up together, and it's like collective thinking among all these stakeholders. Maritime spatial planning is a tool that can be used in this fitting together of different kinds of needs and possibilities and aspirations that take place on local level. All global environmental concerns or problems, they take place on local level. Whatever it is that affects people globally, they take place on a local scale, on local level, in real concrete places. The idea is that we find the ways in which these different needs and pressures can be fit together for a better overall result at local level, regional level, national level, and then it builds up at global level. Maritime spatial planning is not only about sea, it's also about how sea and land interact and ecosystems. Marine ecosystems and terrestrial ecosystems, how they interact, and how socio-ecological systems in the sea and in land, how they interact and how they merge. Because of that, basically all sectors of society are stakeholders or are important in maritime spatial planning. For example, in Finland we have this process which is participatory, which is interactive. So, so at the moment the planning involves scenario building. So what are the scenarios for the coastal areas and the sea for the next 30 years, for example, for the year 2050? So how do we see the different possible futures in that time scale? And then what are the tools and what are the ways in which maritime spatial planning can take into account the diversity of different possible futures? So how the planning can take into account the fact that we don't know exactly what will happen. And that is why the participation of all possible stakeholders is so important. All kinds of stakeholders, from recreation and tourism to energy, also armed forces, because defense is an important sector also in the coastal areas, fisheries, fish farming, aquaculture, and one of the most important things and sectors is of course the environment. So environmental authorities, researchers, but as individual citizens there's a kind of gap that what can you do if you want to take part in a more kind of collective way, and how people could be activated. Spatial tools, online tools, are quite developed. So we have different kinds of tools that you can use online with maps, and you can comment maps and you can collect information from citizens. On the other hand, you have developed tools for dialogue online. So you have possibilities to get people involved in discussions about things. Combining these two is like what is lacking. So it's like the spatial aspect is one, but it's more one direction. You collect information, and the other one is like the dialogue, but it's without the spatial aspect.
There are like ways of having dialogues. There are ways to engage participation. Depends a lot of what kind of process you want to achieve. Nowadays, there are a lot of ICT solutions that are also enabling these kind of collaborative efforts. So, for example, we have crowdsourcing is one of these tools that even if the participants are not completely owning the process, it's an open platform that allows participants to pitch in and to feel that they are like contributing to something that will provide them with some benefits. We were also studying a lot about what is to co-create with non-humans, and like how you take into consideration the impacts that your decisions will have in those that perhaps don't have a voice, but they will be affected, like our fish or the plants and so on. The first part is to acknowledge that they are parts of the process.
For example, when we talk about ecosystem services, it's very anthropocentric, and we see animals and minerals as resources that we can exploit, that provide services that benefit humankind, but we don't consider that maybe animals have agency, and they're not just a function or a process intermediate that's part of natural capital. Yeah, like the ecosystem service concept could be expanded and re-elaborated to not make non-humans just part of the intermediate detail, but part of receiving the benefit. And it's always surprised me that the environmental research community is not so holistically thinking about the rights of animals. If we think that nature exists with an intrinsic quality, then I think we need to also say that animals for sure have intrinsic qualities, and that the way we use them is unnecessary and harmful for them, and is harming their basic dignity. So I think that I would really like to see a coming together, a merger between this sort of like the animal rights community that's very much invested in environmental justice ideas, and the environmental research community. I think this is genuinely part of an environmental ecological economics research agenda, but it's just not there at the moment. Ecological economics as a research inquiry has that great opportunity to bring in different ideas, because it's so multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary, that we can learn from those philosophers who are proponents of animal rights, and we can learn from them in the same way that we can learn from the environmental justice community about how environmental pollution harms different sectors of the human society, and that's something that we're very willing to accept as part of ecological economics, but not so much how it harms animals. But I mean, I think that we can include those people in the conversation who are speaking up for animals and more broadly non-humans.